And I now call on Deputy Gerry Adams. There is a question in relation to the service for intellectually disabled in Louth and nationally. Hacht Adams, Kerabamacha.
And well, an Irish Shaw, Glacun and Kest. Oh, Yanni too, I go to market. Well, Tommy Quake, that's it. I want to thank the Minister for being here to answer this question. And, you know, it's no exaggeration to say that people with disabilities and their families in my constituency of Louth and Eastmeath and across this state are being treated deplorably. I've met dozens of families with citizens with intellectual disabilities, and they all tell a similar tale of the never-ending fight to access services from this state. And these are services which should be theirs by right. The anger of parents in particular is palpable. They are furious at how their loved ones are being treated, and they feel that nobody is listening. I will give you some examples, and I thank those individuals for permitting me to tell their stories. Michael McManus was born in 1962. He suffered a seizure at 2 years old, which resulted in severe brain damage, and as a result, Michael today at 54 has the mental age and development of a 2-year-old. Michael's family provided for all his needs at home until it was no longer possible for them to do so. This is a sad enough story, but it's the state's attitude to Michael and people like him which really angers those who care for him. On the day of Michael's death, his mother's death, he was moved by the then Health Board to residential accommodation. His family later realised that Michael had been moved to a psychiatric facility in County Monaghan. Here, among other major issues, the family reported that Michael was attacked in his bed by another resident. And it was only after a sustained campaign, including legal representation, that Michael was eventually given a place at St John of God, St Mary's Drumcar facility, which is located in my constituency. Now, there are many issues, troubling issues, with the Drumcar facility, and I've raised these directly with the management and the HSE and in the Dáil. But the fact is that Michael has lived happily here for over 20 years. He now faces the possibility of being moved again as part of the decongregation policy. Sinn Féin supports decongregation. Evidence backs the assertion that it delivers better quality of life for people in residential accommodation. But we have to be sensible about it. We have to consult with those people. We have to do it at their pace. For Michael and others my office has been in contact with, Drumcar is home. These families are not against decongregation per se, but they have simply not been consulted by the HSE regarding the future plans for their loved ones. And this, I'm sure, Ira, you will accept, is totally unacceptable. They have real fears if their loved ones are moved, their quality of care will reduce. They may be moved to inappropriate locations. They will be traumatised by taken out of their familiar surroundings. Other families have cared for their loved ones all their lives. They describe themselves to me, and I quote, as the first generation to bring their disabled babies home. This is a time when babies with disabilities were being put into mother and baby homes and other institutions. They reared them from infancy. Now their children are in their 40s or older. These people, now elderly themselves, have met a brick wall in terms of the future care of their now adult children. They're part of the Dundalk parents and friends of the intellectually disabled. They've been campaigning for years and working with the HSE, Louth County Council and the Department of Housing in order to provide future homes in Dundalk for their children. Minister, one size does not fit all, particularly for people with additional needs. For every family like Michael's, there's another family who can't wait for their loved ones to be moved to a community setting. Will you meet these families to hear their experiences and discuss the future care of our disabled citizens?
Thank you. Can I thank the Deputy for raising this extremely important issue today and for giving me the opportunity to outline the position on services for people with disabilities who need respite supports. And obviously I'm taking this on behalf of Minister McGrath, who gives his apologies for not being here. The Government's ongoing priority is the safeguarding of vulnerable people in the care of the health service, and it is committed to providing services and supports for people with disabilities which will empower them to live independent lives, provide them with greater independence in accessing the services that they choose, and enhancing their ability to tailor the supports required to meet their individual needs and to plan their own lives. The provision of respite services has come under additional pressure in the past number of years, with an increasing number of children and adults now seeking access to respite, and the changing needs of people with a disability are also having an impact as they, along with the rest of the population, live longer lives. The HSE acknowledges the need for additional respite for adults with intellectual disabilities in County Louth, for adults and children with a disability and their families. And I would agree with the Deputy, one size does not fit all, so I think it's important to outline the respite that is currently being provided at the following locations in County Louth. There's respite for adults with a physical disability and provided by the Irish Wheelchair Association at Shrutton House, Dundalk. This is a 3-bedroom house that operates 6 nights per week in a community setting and a social model housing respite. There's respite for adults with intellectual disabilities provided by Moorhall Healthcare, 3-bedroom houses operating 7 nights per week in a community setting, social model holiday respite, which is in RD County Louth, and approximately 80 adults avail of this service. There's respite for adults with intellectual disabilities provided by St John of God's North East Service in a 7-bed house on the campus at St Mary's Drumcar, which the Deputy has referenced. This house operates 7 nights per week in a medical nurse-led model with approximately 42 adults availing of this service. Respite for children with intellectual disabilities is provided by St John of God's North East Service, and it is a 7-bed house on the campus at St Mary's Drumcar. The house operates 7 nights per week in a medical nurse-led model, and approximately 9 children avail of this service. Finally, respite for children with intellectual disabilities is also provided by Rehab Care at the Mary Grotty Centre Lordship, County Louth, in a 4-bedroom house, and this operates 6 nights per week with approximately 80 families availing of this service. Again, I would agree that there needs to be absolute consultation with individuals and their family members should anything change or should their circumstances change, and if there are particular cases that the Deputy wants to pass on to me, I can certainly bring them to the attention of Minister McGrath. The Programme for Partnership Government recognises the need for respite services to be developed further, and the Minister of State for Disability has acknowledged this. These matters will remain on the agenda for the Minister of State in the context of budgetary provisions in the coming years.
I know you're only stepping in for the Minister, and let me tell you I've raised some of these issues directly with the Minister, including another case of a 42-year-old constituent who's non-verbal and has high support needs. I raised this with the Minister McGrath in the chamber here 5 weeks ago, and I'm still waiting for a response. The HSA has told me that this man's need for a residential placement has been identified, but that a business case for additional funding for this placement was not successful. So what are his family to do? That's the question. What are they to do? Last Concordia. They can't meet his needs any longer at home. What are they to do, Minister? And, you know, this is another forgotten citizen in the greatest little country in the world to do business in. And I could go on and on and on. I know you're a constituency, Choctadala also, and that you meet with families who are begging for speech and language therapy, for occupational therapy, for medical assessments and supports. And it's a never-ending life of worry. It never stops. If you are a child from infancy, as in these cases, until they're in their 40s, there's no respite. One of these young chaps, he's 42-year-old, spends all night in the house of his elderly parents, walking up and down the stairs, without cease, up and down the stairs, up and down the stairs. And there are currently 7,176 children waiting over 1 year for assessments or initial therapies under early intervention services. Now, I minded when I saw the 1 year, that it's only 1 year since we celebrated and extolled the centenary of the 1916 Rising. And in all of that time, these kids and their parents have still been trying to get early intervention services. And now that the lofty rhetoric of ministerial speeches has faded, the reality of life for these citizens with disabilities and for their families stands in stark, tragic contradiction of all the fine words. So I'm sorry that the Minister can't be here, and I understand Ministers can't be here all the time to take topical issues, but the Government needs to get real and tell these parents what its plans are for dealing with these citizens.
I would say there is an absolute recognition, not just by the HSE, but by the Minister in particular, that there needs to be additional support, there needs to be additional funds put in place specifically for these groups of individuals. So the young adults who are in their 40s and 50s, who are living at home with their parents, who are in their 70s and 80s, it is absolutely not the situation that they should be in, and there does need to be additional support provided there for young adults with high support needs and those who are in emergency and crisis situations. However, we do find ourselves in a situation where we have limited resources. We must work within the budgetary constraints, all the while trying to provide support for the most vulnerable in our society. And you're right, in my own county in Meath, we need additional support, we need additional respite for our young children, for our young adults and for the parents of those people as well. But just to outline specifically in County Louth, funding for this year for children's respite from 6 to 18 years, you have almost £500,438,000. Adult intellectual respite, 531,000. Adult physical and sensory respite, 440,000. And of the 31 million which was allocated for the adult intellectual disability and children's respite in St John of God's, a portion of that is going to Louth. So I would agree, and the Minister would agree, that is not enough. But again, a case has to be put forward, and obviously within the constraints of the budget, every effort will be made to provide support and respite for those who need it most. Claire Daly.